in Tanya. It's chapter 18. In Hebrew, the word 18 is the numerical value, is 18 is a numerical value for the word chai. Chai means life. Yud and achet equals 18. And this is chapter 18. It's really the life of the Tanya. Right here it's saying, no matter what you don't think you're capable of, you inherit by very nature, by your very DNA, this incredible love that no matter how lowly a person may feel or think that they have a soul that's coming from the level of chachma. And we're going to learn a little more about what chachma is today, but it's amazing. I'm really excited to continue this. So we learned about the souls, we learned about the roots of the souls in last week, and we learned that all of our souls come through the highest of worlds. It's all connected to the world of Atzilut. So we learned last week, just in short, Kabbalistically, we learned there's 4 general worlds, one above the other. We now are stationed in the lowest world. But through work and avodah, through service, we rise up and transcend to higher worlds, the place that's more spiritual, the place that's less negative and more positive, all the way up to a place that's beyond even any negativity, the world of emanation. Emanation is the highest of worlds. It's the first space where God's light is emanating into. Before that, there was God's light, but it was so powerful, it was infinite. There wasn't even an emanation from it because it was all-encompassing. But then comes the world of Atzilut, which is the first place where God says, okay, I need to bring this down, and God does it level by level. In Hebrew, the Kabbalistic term, and Vivian and Shira, you perhaps remember from a previous study that we've done together a couple of years ago, the word is tzimtzum, which means to contract and to condense, to God basically narrow down his light. Because the light was so great, it couldn't be able to emanate and be a light to the world. Just like a teacher, sometimes just because a teacher is a genius doesn't make him a good teacher, because he has so much teachings, but unless he knows how to remove that teaching, keep it to a side, and only give the seed of the information, a very basic thing, tzimtzum, to the student, otherwise the student could get lost. So if God's light was too great, it wouldn't be able to shine in the world without it being first contracted. It's like the sun. If the sun was shining too brightly, it would be dangerous. As we see now, the dangers going on, especially here in Northern California. But God, in his kindness, put what's called an ozone layer, this shield and protector around the sun, so we shouldn't be burnt by the sun. In the same way, God actually also made, besides for his godly light, also made a contraction of that light in order that we should be able to receive it. It's a very godly idea. If you want to know just a little more Kabbalistically, God has different names. Each name of God is representing a different attribute, a different part, so to speak. And the main name, which is Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, is known as the Tetragrammaton. It's God's holy name. It's the holiest of names. That is the light of God that is to create, to bring into existence, bring world into existence. But then you have the name Elokim with a Hey. I don't pronounce God's name not in prayer, but or Elokeinu. That name of God is actually the name of God that contracts. So when we say the verse, we're supposed to say this every morning and every evening. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The middle word, Elokeinu, over there, is the light of God that is actually contracting and removing, not allowing the shine to be too bright. But I guess that's getting a little bit off topic here. The point over here is that we each, our light and our soul is coming from this light of God, all the way from God's infinity. But the way God brings that into the world is through the world of Atzilut, the world of emanation. And in the world of emanation, there's 10 parts, Sefirot, 10 levels, the highest of which is Chachma, the seat of wisdom. All of our souls, no matter what world we're on, and no matter what level within the world, because there's 10 levels within every world, all of ours are emanating originally from this Chachma of Atzilut. So each and every one of us are connected to that, and we have the power in our DNA to rise up all the way back up there. And that's the service that we could rise up to. Now here's going to be the clincher of chapter 18. What's amazing is sometimes that pops up, that level, that a soul that's so powerful, so strong, it pops up in times of danger. When we feel like our connection to God will be severed, when we feel like our Judaism is on the line, our relationship to God is on the line, then we'll do whatever it takes to keep that alive. And we're going to be on an adrenaline rush. We'll be on a spiritual adrenaline rush. Sorry, and when that happens, we're very strong. It's like the example I gave previously of the woman who's able to lift a car because, God forbid, her child is stuck underneath it. There's this incredible power that's there. So the Alter Rebbe is trying to bring up over here that you should know that even if you don't feel capable of meditations, capable of feeling stirred on the high holidays, or capable of feeling the love of God in your heart deeply, you should know that it's there. You don't have to find it. It's not something that you have to develop and meditate on. You should, but that's the longer way. But even if you feel incapable of that, chapter 18 comes and tells you, you don't have to search for it. You don't have to develop it because you already have it. You just have to dig deep and uncover it. But it's much easier to allow something inside of you to rise up to the surface than to try to go and buy something, right? Then it's a much bigger process. Over here, you're not buying anything. It's something you already inherit from our patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. How did they inherit? Like, it's not, you don't inherit your love of your taste of apples doesn't get passed over to your child. So how do you develop this love from a patriarch to us? So that was a reward that God gave Avraham. Avraham, by very nature, was fully surrendered to God. It's actually an incredible thing. I mentioned this on Yom Kippur. Many have the custom to wear white on Yom Kippur. Different reasons. One is we are like angels on this day. One is that we are like the bride getting married to God on Yom Kippur. It's like the chuppah. It's the moment of marriage and commitment for the year. But it's also that symbol of white is that cleansing, that we're fully one in a relationship to God. We're fully surrendered to God's will. It's like a chariot. A chariot, whatever direction the rider goes, or a car, whatever direction the rider wants to go in, that's the direction the car automatically turns. Avram was like that. Whatever God wanted, that's what Avram wanted. He didn't have his own will. It wasn't God wants this, I want that. Okay, I'll put myself on the side again and I'll give God Shabbat. It wasn't like that for Avram. It was just love for God and this natural desire to do what God wants. It wasn't. Here's another amazing thing about Avram. Here's a big difference. We learned this many times in Kabbalah. It says that a big contrast. Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest giants of Torah. We actually spoke about him on Yom Kippur because his yahrzeit, he died. He was a martyr. He died the Romans killed him for studying Torah at the age of 120. Rabbi Akiva died on Yom Kippur. He composed the beautiful Avinu Malkeinu that we sing, Our Father, Our King. It was composed by Rabbi Akiva. But Rabbi Akiva would always say, when am I going to be given the opportunity to give my life over to God? He was waiting and hoping for the moment where his very Jewishness, his very relationship to God will be the reason for his death. So he wasn't looking to die. He was looking for that opportunity to do whatever it takes to remain connected to God. In Hebrew, it's called Mesiras Nefesh, which means totally giving up yourself. So that means if, God forbid, a person, and we've seen this, unfortunately, too many times throughout history, Jews persecuted and Jews being gunned down, God forbid, or pogroms, etc., just because they were Jewish. Rabbi Akiva said that is the epitome of my relationship to God. The fact that I'm even ready to die for God and not sever that relationship. So that's a very high level that Rabbi Akiva attained. But Avram was even higher. Because Avram, it wasn't about giving up his life. It was about whatever God wants me to do at this moment. So God wants me to do Shabbat, I'll do Shabbat. God wants me to give my life up, okay, I'll give it up. But it wasn't about giving my life up to attain a higher level. It was about doing whatever God wants from me. There was this beautiful meditation that the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, it's brought down from all the Rebbes. They would say that their great-grandfather or their grandfather or their father, the first Chabad Rebbe goes in the dynasty, he would meditate. Sometimes by the Alter Rebbe, we don't have this so often nowadays, but he would be in a state of dveikut, which is a state of cleaving to God. And when he was in this state, he would be like on the floor. Could you imagine a Rebbe rolling over on the floor, meditating on certain words, totally oblivious to his surroundings? People would put their ear close to see, what is the Rebbe speaking about in this unconscious state? What is he speaking to God about? So they heard, and this was more than once. It was something pretty common. I don't know if it was once a year, but the Alter Rebbe would say in Yiddish, I'll translate it in English. In Yiddish, he said, Ich will ze gar nicht. Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden. Ich will nicht dein Elam Haba. Ich will mehr nicht as dich allein. It's Yiddish. Some of you may know some of those words, but the Alter Rebbe would say in a state of emotional and meditation, he would say, God, I don't want anything. I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want your world to come. All I want is you. Some people do mitzvahs because of the reward, because of the deep, either personal satisfaction. When they give charity, they feel good. And don't stop it. Keep on giving, even if it feels good. But then there's a higher level. You're doing it because of a spiritual reward you will get, because not only because of bounty and livelihood and reward that God promises, but there's a spiritual spot of Gan Eden, of the world to come, a paradise that's waiting for me. That's not a Hasidic approach. We don't do mitzvahs because of reward. We do it simply because it's what God wants from me. All I want is you. It's an incredible level to be in a relationship when you're not doing it because I'll do this, oh, I'll get that back. I'll do this by day, I'll get that by night, or whatever it is that you may be looking for. A real relationship, a wholesome, a healthy, a real honest relationship is you're just doing it for the other person. That's the level that Avram was on. He just did it because he wanted it for God. It wasn't for him. Having said that, that is possible within my soul and within your soul. We all have this natural love for God and to just want to be connected to him. It's covered. And the work now from chapter 18 to 25 is how to uncover it. We know one general time that it's unfortunate, but it will come to the surface is in a time of danger, when you feel like your whole relationship to God is in danger. Then it will jump up. It'll say, hey, I'm never ready to sever this. The reason why it doesn't come up often, and we have people not doing the right things, is because they don't think that this is that dangerous for their soul. They don't think it's really disconnecting them. But when it comes to a time that they really would feel disconnected, they would, without a doubt, without a blink of an eye, want to keep that relationship and even be ready to give their life. So that's the point of chapter 18 that we're going to be learning now. And I'll pull up on the Kindle. Robin, do you want to just tell me what you have as where we are up to? And then I'll take questions.
We're on page 216. Perfect. And as we have learned.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll pull that up. Thank you. And so that Yaakov about the Tetragrammaton, it's Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. It's very Kabbalistic. I really have to pull it up on the board and explain how those four letters, it actually explains the whole process of God's emanation of light into the world. The Yud is the dot. Yeah, go ahead.
My question isn't about the Tetragrammaton. Well, it is about the Tetragrammaton, but it's not about its meaning, because I already understand all that. My question is...
good, Yaakov, if you understand that, you're a master. That's good stuff. Yeah. Continue. Yep.
Okay, maybe I don't mean it totally that way, but...
good to have the confidence.
I understand that at one time, the name was passed from teacher to student, right? And at one time there was, during the Roman occupation, there was a rabbi that because the Romans forbid anybody from speaking the name, he was out teaching Torah out on the street with the scroll, and he said the name. And the Romans came over, and from what I heard, they wrapped him in the Torah scroll and lit him on fire, right, as an example to other people. And that that from that point on, it became a mitzvah for us not to actually say the name during prayer. Is this true?
Part of it is true. Actually, the story is the story of the Torah that they wrapped around him is true. There's even more to the story. To prolong his suffering and pain, they actually put a wet sponge on his heart. They wrapped him in the
Right.
Torah. And the students, this is from the tractate, the Talmud tractate, Avodah Zarah, page 17a. And we actually read this also on Yom Kippur. It was part of the part of the liturgy, where it says, this part we don't read on Yom Kippur, but they force the students to observe and to see the brutality of what happens for someone studying Torah. And the famous words he said is, they asked him, "What do you see?" Like when he was burning, and he says, I see parchment burning and letters soaring, letters flying." The powerful answer that he gave, that they could burn our Torahs, they could burn our bodies, but the soul of Torah, the letters, remain forever ingrained in our heart, and that's something that they can never take away from us. And that's really, the fact is, 2,000 years later, we're still here studying Torah with love, devotion, and joy. It's because we have the soul of Torah that can never be taken from us. But the first part of the story is not true. He didn't say the name of God. He was just studying Torah.
Okay.
But the name of the Tetragrammaton was not part of it. And actually, Shira, about the white shrouds, Vivian is actually part of the Chevra Kadisha, something we're looking to start here in our community. The members of the Great Assembly, the Holy Assembly of Burial Society. So we buried in white shrouds also, like we were saying about Yom Kippur. My favorite part of that actually is also that there is no pockets in the shrouds. And it's a reminder that we don't bring anything with us, anything tangible. All the success that we've attained in the past doesn't come with us. It's not, it doesn't go anywhere. And it's just from private question, the difference between Chachma and Yechida. We'll hopefully get into it a little more in today's class. Yechida is a level higher than Chachma, but let's see inside. All right, I'll pull up the Kindle. I'm so glad we get to learn this, and hopefully today, we'll certainly finish the chapter today, and maybe even squeeze in a little bit of 19. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I hope everyone can see the screen. I hope that's helpful for some. And just making sure, does anyone appreciate the screen open? People are reading from the screen. Anyone? Okay, I take that as a yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There is a practical lesson that I skipped over from last week, and even though in the Kindle edition it is going to come up at the end, I thought maybe it'll just be nice if we read it now. Practical lesson is, all the components of your soul are profoundly interconnected. So it's not hard to tap into your faith, because as soon as you tap into one part of it, you're actually connected to the rest of it. It's just a matter of reaching it, but it's there. It's a very powerful idea that there's not too many strings you have to pull. You're already pulling on the right string, and it's just a matter of reaching the higher part of it. Okay, so now we're in the middle of learning about Chachma. Chachma is the root, is the first place. It's the vehicle for the light to come into the world. It comes through this level of Chachma. If you're looking in the Kindle around the paragraph towards the top, as we have learned, page 216, also towards the top in the book, Chachma represents an inquisitiveness and openness to the unknown. That is why Chachma alone is capable of acting as a receptacle to the infinite light of God. Anything other than absolute openness would serve as a finite structure that would be incompatible with an infinite light. So you have an infinite light. The only way that infinite light could be bestowed and can be channeled is only through Chachma, which is the right and proper receptacle, because it's totally open. There's no ego on its own. Chachma is the absolute humility. And think of it, Chachma is the idea of inquiring. If you're inquiring about something, you're totally open to an idea. If you're too full of yourself, you won't allow that openness. You feel like you know it already. And I think I mentioned this last week. God says, a person with ego I can't live together with. Because either you're full of yourself or you can be full of God. So the idea of chachma is absolute openness, surrender, humility. That's the key of chachma. Oh, did I get frozen? Oh, can you guys hear me? Hold on one second, guys.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so we will continue. So it turns out that regardless of what kind of Jew you may be, the infinite light of God is present in the chachma component of your soul. And that component of chachma, together with the blessed infinite light present in it, then dissipates throughout your entire soul, to every component within it, energizing your soul at all its levels from head to foot. As the verse states, chachma gives life to those who possess it. And finally, let's just finish this little section, then we'll review a little bit. In a parenthetical comment, the Tanya observes, and sometimes even sinful Jews, when conceiving their children, will draw down very lofty souls, which had been trapped in the depth of the klipas, that oppose the souls coming on earth due to their holiness, as is stated in Sefer Al-Gilgulim. Let's just see that. Let's read this little paragraph, and then we'll try to summarize this. In a cause and effect universe, it seems bizarre that very sinful people would have the purity of intention necessary to draw down lofty souls for their children. But based on the above, the phenomenon makes more sense. Even the most sinful Jew has chachma in his soul, in which the blessed infinite light shines, and that is certainly a sufficiently lofty energy to elicit a lofty soul. So just to explain this a little bit, we touched on this in chapter 2. But to explain it, two parents, a father and a mother, have the power, have the ability to bring a soul down into this world. Really, it's up to the parents. They get not to choose, but based on how they approach their intimacy will be the source of the soul that comes into the world. They're able to reach and draw down a soul into this world. So usually, if they're having inappropriate thoughts and their mind is not in the right place, and they're thinking of the wrong things, the soul is going to be more of a lower level soul. But if they're able to think lofty things and have the appropriate holy thoughts at the time of intimacy, there's actually an incredible holiness that is being bestowed in that powerful moment of bond between man and woman. But now we're saying that it could also be, and hold on, I'll take a question in a second. What we're saying here is it could also be that at times, sometimes even people that are on a very low spiritual level are able to draw down a very lofty soul. And we see that. There's people whose parents are no goodniks. They're doing things that are not right, but they're blessed with a child that is a prodigy, that is holy, that is pure and sincere and loyal, and all the beautiful compliments for this child. Because it could be that even those spiritually lowly souls, ultimately they're also connected to the highest. So it could be that at that moment they were still able to draw from the highest, because it's not something away from them, it's something just that they have to reach into. I don't know if I explained that, elaborated enough. It's a little bit of a side parentheses here. But yeah, Robin, you had a question?
I do, thanks. It's, I'm understanding what you're saying. It's a little troubling to me in a sense. I mean, in one sense, it's lovely to, I guess, put holiness into sex, heterosexual sex.
Yeah.
But it is a little troublesome when I think, geez, what happens to women who are raped? I mean, what a horrible thing is happening at the moment of conception. What does that mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually the Torah does talk about that. So there's two parts. I don't want to move too far away from the beauty and realizing that the power, the moment of intimacy between man and woman is actually the closest connection, the closest moment we could get to God's intimacy with God's kissing of the world, God's infinite light, giving and bestowing into the world, the Sephirat, which are really the moment of reception, is actually, Shabbat is exactly this moment. Friday night is really that moment of intimacy between God and world, between the giver, God, creating, and now with light into the world. So it even says in many places that even just an embrace of love between a man and a woman, and a kiss is creating angels. A kind, gentle word is an incredible, holy. It's an amazing thing that in a religion, in other religions, it's considered something frowned upon, etc. The holier the person, the less they do it, the more celibate they are. In truth, in Torah, it's the holiest moment. It's a mitzvah. It's actually the first mitzvah God gave humanity. Pruvu, be fruitful and multiply. So whether that's your role or not, and every person to their own, but the concept, the idea of intimacy is absolutely incredibly holy idea. And our thoughts are supposed to be prepared for that. And you're supposed to really think of, Manis Friedman, a great Chabad rabbi, I'm sure, Robin, you've probably heard of him. He says that, they would ask their grandmother or something, what happens in your bedroom? When they were like young teens, I'm curious. And the grandmother would answer, nothing. And in truth, she was right, because there's no things that are supposed to be there when you're in a moment of intimacy with your spouse. Because at that moment, there's nothing else. There's no rock band music. There's no, it's all each other. The moment is with the other person, not with another thing. So there's no thing. It was actually a very accurate statement, you would say. So, of course, if it's done in a illegal, if it's done illegally, it's actually, there's times when intimacy is forbidden, right? Take, for example, a brother and a sister. That not only is it not holy anymore, it's absolutely the worst possible. It's wrong. It's forbidden. The Torah says no, and the same is also, God forbid, if there's rape and anything else. I mean, the Torah actually has capital punishment for such a thing, and we're not going to get into that topic now. But I'm talking about the way it's supposed to be done in an honest, true ketubah relationship, chuppah, etc. It's the holiest thing. If it's not done in the proper way, it's actually forbidden, which means it's not holy at all, and it's on the other opposite extreme. By the way, going back to chapter 8, I don't think, Robin, it was right before COVID. We learned chapter 8 at the beginning of March. And
I listened to all of your previous classes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I had a recording on 8. I only started my
8,
recordings
right.
on 9.
It started with 10, I think. It started with
9 or 10. But,
yeah.
But good to note that over there, he actually talks about illicit, forbidden relations. It's actually part of the 3 worst kalipas, the 3 impure, contaminated kalipas. Rape would be part of that. So we're talking about the holy. So again, intimacy is the exact example, just going back to chapter 8, that it's our opportunity to either raise those moments up to Kedusha and allow that pleasure and that moment with the spouse to be elevated to the highest of holy, or it could be downgraded to the lowest of klipas, depending on how it's done. Let's see, as a good listen to. Okay, cool, awesome. So where can we see the Torah says about rape? What if Dina conceived? Yeah, so those are a little off topic. We could get there. Actually, the Torah portion is going to be coming up in November. We're going to be. I can't believe we're already October. So we're going to be reading those. We'll save it for then. We can talk about it. Okay, I want to try to finish the chapter today. We'll continue on section 4. This is going to be really nice. Above, we touched upon why Chachma in particular serves as a window to the soul. Just making sure everyone can still hear me. Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you. So we have Chachma. Chachma is the highest of all spiritual levels. It's considered the window for the soul, Chachma, because that's where the infinite light of God is shining through. The Tanya will now elaborate on this idea. So this is going to be really nice. Now, as we learned in chapter 3, Chachma, which is the highest of levels in the world, right? That's where the Ch from Chabad comes from. Is the Chachma, the inquiry, is the source of all intelligence and cognition. Chachma precedes Bina. which is the experience of cognitively grasping an idea previously intuited in a raw state by Chachma. So it's Chachma that precedes and is the source of cognition and grasping. So just to explain, you have Chachma, and the other word here is Bina. Chachma and Bina is the initial inquiry, the source of intelligence, the seed of wisdom. And then the Bina is the grasping it, analyzing it, dissecting it, and making it something real. To explain that a little more, take, for example, a fuel, an igniter. You know those igniters for bonfires? You could have a lot of fuel in there, but if this, I think it's called the sparker, the spark is not there, it's not going to be able to give you any fire. It's worthless. Throw it out. Right? We have a stovetop with burners, and the gas one, you can have a lot of gas coming through, but if the spark, the what's it called, the igniter, I think it's called, is not working, you can't get anything in. So the chachma is that igniter. It's that initial spark of wisdom. Once you have that igniter, you need the bina to fuel it, to fan it, to bring it to life. So one without the other is kind of, doesn't really work. You kind of need both. One complements the other. It starts with chachma, and then it goes into bina. The same is also with the conception of a child. You need a seed, but it needs to be fertilized in the womb and with the eggs in order for it to develop. You can have a seed that does nothing without it being developed by the mother. You can have the mother, but they need the seed in order to have that initial seed, that sperm, to start. So again, that's exactly the same as chachma, which is like the male, and bina, which is the mother. And you need one and you need the other. Chachma is the initial, the spark, the seed, the igniter, and then comes to bina, which is the developer and bringing it all to life. This is also reflected in the Hebrew word chachma. So I'm going to do something here. I hope all of you can see. I'm just going to mark my red dot over here. Does everyone see that word chachma on the bottom? Maybe a little bit small on your screens, but this is the word chachma. If you take those words, chachma, it comes up with two words. The first word is koach. If anyone heard of the word yasher koach, yasher koach means like a good job. Koach literally means strength. Ma is a good Hebrew word for you guys all to know. If you want to make as if you know Hebrew, and you go to Israel and you say, oh yeah, I speak Hebrew, and then they tell you something and you're not sure what they say, you have to say ma, which means what? Well, like, what did you say? So ma is a pretty common Hebrew word. So if you take this word chachma itself, you actually break it into two words, koach ma, which means it's a strength, it's a power, but what is it? You don't know what it is yet. When you have chachma, that seed of wisdom, and someone says, oh, what are you thinking about? You can't describe it. You don't know yet. You didn't analyze it. You didn't dissect it. You didn't develop it. It's just in the initial state, like an igniter. It's just the seed of wisdom. So what is it? The koach ma, the strength, it's powerful. But what is it? So this is actually really nice to appreciate. Every word in Hebrew, the name of it characterizes what the definition is. So you don't have that in English. In Hebrew, when Adam and Eve, the first humans in the world, when they named everything in Hebrew, that became the life force of that thing. So they looked at a horse, they saw the spiritual energy of the horse, and they called it a sus. So those three letters, a samach, vav samach, somehow is the spiritual divine energy of what the horse is. So the word chachma is made up of these two words because it's a koach, it's a very powerful strength. But what is it? You can't tap it. You can't explain it. Chachma. Chachma is I'm just going to take off is the power, ability to say, what is this? An inquisitiveness and openness to that which is not yet grasped and understood and still defies comprehension. So that's chachma. I hope this is being somewhat clear. Chachma is the openness, where it's still not defined. You're still asking, what is it? You're still inquiring. You're still inquisitive about the idea. That's chachma. It's a very powerful strength to be able to have that inquisitiveness and openness and ask, what is this? And try to think into it. Once you're starting to think about it, it's going to lead into bina. But this initial is called chachma. And that is why the blessed infinite light can be expressed there in chachma. Because no thought can grasp the infinite light at all. Therefore, it is best captured by the precognitive, intuitive, and open qualities of chachma. Okay, so we're getting a little bit Kabbalistic again here. I really enjoy these ideas. This is awesome. It's saying that the Zohar says that we can't grasp God. For a creation, which is me and you, to be able to grasp the creator just doesn't add up. There's no way we could understand God's ways. The closest we could get to grasping God is through chachma, because chachma is an openness. It's not that confidence in saying, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to climb the mountain and meet God. It's an openness into saying God is infinite. I'm going to try and ask, what is this? How could I reach out? That openness to reach out to God. That's chachma. So that's captured, the infinite light could best be grasped or captured with this quality of chachma. So far what we know is chachma is the highest of qualities that allows the inquisitiveness, the openness, etc. Now here we get to something very, very beautiful. I want you to know that Chabad, unfortunately, this is just the way it was in the olden days, women were not very literate in Torah. It's just the fact that, go back to Russia, where Jews were living in utter poverty. The men were ignorant themselves in the farm. They went to shul to pray, and they would study a little bit in between. Women didn't really have that luxury of study. All of this changed in the 1800s and even in the 1900s. The Rebbe opened the first women's yeshiva. My mother-in-law went to this yeshiva, a yeshiva for women to have the same level of study as men. Any of you that are in Adina's classes know the level of depth of study is incredible now, but it's made a lot of strides. It used to be, and it's not something I'm happy, that women, and it's just, I think, like that in the world, it's nothing to do with Judaism in particular, that women weren't given that luxury of education in the olden days. A lot of it changed. For example, the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, his wife, his daughter, the women of that family were giants of Torah. Giants. They were like leaders in their own right of Torah. It's actually an amazing thing. The daughter of the Alter Rebbe, she's a few of her daughters, it would say about them, they were so holy and giants of Torah that people would come to ask them questions in law. And it says about one of the daughters, she was able to walk between the raindrops. What exactly that means, I don't know. But there was such a power of Torah that was going on. But it wasn't always like that. So even 300 years ago, even those that didn't feel that grasp, even they would have it. Even those that were uneducated would have it. That's what the Alter Rebbe is going to say here. They have a faith that is beyond anything. And actually, it's beautiful. I don't think I have anyone here that's Russian in our class, but it's amazing to see the simple faith that Russians have, that they came from the former Soviet Union without knowing anything about the Torah. They weren't given that luxury of being able to study because they were just fighting for their life. And it was forbidden. And it went death or prison or labor. But they come to this country and their respect for God, not as if they know if they believe in God, but anything Judaism oriented, they respect. I'm telling you, Americans don't respect rabbis as much as Russians do. It's an amazing thing. And it's not putting down one or another. It's just a beautiful faith that Russians have that this is what we have to do. Why? I don't know. But there's something here that's for me. We have to marry Jewish. Why? because that's what we do. It's something the Russians have that are very strong on. And it's really beautiful. It's a faith that is not, I just want to explain, faith is not irrational. Faith is super rational. Faith is beyond logic, not below logic. And that's where this level could come from, grasping chachma. Let's see that inside, and hopefully it'll make sense. That is why all Jews, even women, who when the Tanya was written did not receive any formal education, and other uneducated people, believe in God, since faith is rooted in chachma, a level of the soul shared by everybody, and is beyond knowledge and cognition. So this is an amazing idea. Beyond my level of knowledge may be different than your level of knowledge, and your level of knowledge may be different than someone else's. And that really creates division. I'm on my level, you're on your level. But we're saying over here that faith, that's coming from chachma. And on that level of chachma, that's shared by me and you. It's beyond bina. That's a really powerful idea. And that's where you can grasp God. Going above the bina clarification or knowledge and understanding of God, there's a level above it. And that's chachma, which it's still, what is it? It's a power of seed of wisdom, of inquiring, that's beyond knowledge. That's on a level of faith. And here's a quote from Solomon. It's actually referring to Moses, if I'm not mistaken, when Moses considers himself to be a simpleton. He says, for the simpleton believes everything, and the sensible one uses his understanding. What does that mean? And with regard to the Holy One who transcends understanding and knowledge, and no thought can grasp him at all, we are all like simpletons compared to him, right? If you would compare your knowledge to that of Einstein or any other genius, you would say, what am I in comparison? So take into consideration my level of knowledge in comparison to God. Of course, you can't even describe, you can't even explain. So we're all simpletons compared to God's knowledge. Faith is a foolish path for something that could be grasped by the mind. When you could grasp something with the mind, you shouldn't rely on faith. But with the infinite light of God, which cannot be contained by the finite tools of cognition, the appropriate connection is through faith. So just to answer, if someone were to ask you, what did you learn in Tanya today? One of the main things we're trying to learn is if you want to have a relationship with God's infinity, you can't rely on your logic, because logic, which is finite, my logic could only take me to a certain place. With infinite light of God, just don't match up. So I'm going to be stuck to understand God based on my logic. To really grasp God, the only way is through this power of chachma, which is the power that is beyond understanding, the power beyond logic. That's the power of chachma, the inquiry, the inquisitiveness and the openness. That is through faith. Faith reaches you in a deep, close connection to God that nothing else could bring you. By the way, I want to spoiler alert, that's really where we're trying to get to, that we each possess this power of chachma. So when we are ready to give up our life to remain connected to God, it's something that's faith-driven, that we have naturally. It's a love for God that is based on faith, that we inherited from Avram, that we don't want to sever our connection with God. It's beyond logic, because logically I can't explain to you why people would do what they did. Logically, I can't explain to you Daniel Pearl in 2003, where he was assimilated. He wasn't connected with anything strongly Jewish, but yet when he was given his last words before they killed him in Pakistan, I think, or Afghanistan, before he was killed by terrorists, his last words he said was, "Hi, my name is Daniel Pearl. My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I am Jewish." That's something that is beyond logic to explain why those were his last words. It's something, a power of chachma that came out of that moment. It's this faith that he's connected with his infinite, with God's infinity, with the soul that is infinite. That's on the level of chachma. And let's just finish this one paragraph and we'll take questions. As the verse states, I was a fool without knowledge. This is David speaking. In Hebrew, the word is a bar or a bor, which is actually the English for it. I was an animal towards you, yet I was always with you. So look how the Alter Rebbe learns this. I was an animal and I was with you. It is precisely because I was a fool and an animal using my faculty of faith and not reason that I was always with you and connected to you. So David is saying I was like an animal, but yet I was with you. He's saying it's because I was not using my logic. I was like an animal, which an animal doesn't use his logic to think something through. They just act on impulse. When I work on my faith-driven relationship to God, that's when you're the closest to God, which is a beautiful way of learning that verse of David. That's a Hasidic terminology of the verse. Let me just scroll down here. I'm loving that there's questions. That's awesome. Russians know what it's like to be persecuted and having their faith criminalized. Exactly. I believe that Pearl was given the text to read by his murderers. Not, I don't think those words were on it. I don't know. I don't think so. You're right. He did hold up a newspaper, and there was a paper that he was reading from after that. But I'm not. I didn't think it was, but I could be wrong. So cognition is finite. Yes, Shira. Faith can be said to be infinite, like Hashem. Exactly. Exactly. Faith is how we connect to Hashem, because God is infinite. Our faith has no limits. Our faith to God is not limited. Logic of ours is limited, but our faith is not. Chachma is the root of this faith, and therefore we each have it on that level of Chachma. And like we said before, our soul is interconnected with all the different levels, all the way up, all the way through to Chachma. And Chachma is that bridge to the infinite that we are connected. And how do we reach that? We can't grasp God, but your faith reaches you to the highest. Awesome. Let's see section 5, and we'll finish the chapter today. Wonderful. Awakening dormant love. This is going to be, I think, the most important part of the chapter, and really the punchline of the entire Tanya is right here. As an indication of the dormant love for God, which can awaken within all of us, the Tanya highlights the historical phenomenon of forced conversion. That is why even the most irreverent and sinful Jews will, in the majority of cases, agree to sanctify God's name and give up their lives when faced with a threat such as serve idols or die. And they will suffer harsh torture rather than denounce the one God. We know so many stories of people who were given the ultimatum: die a Jew, or convert, or serve this, or do this, and they felt if this would mean their end to their relationship to God, they're not ready to do it. They would 100% give up their life. The fact that when given an ultimatum, many irreverent and sinful Jews chose to give up their lives for Judaism is startling and counterintuitive. It is conceivable that an extremely devoted Jew might choose to do the ultimate act of worship and die for God. But the irreverent Jews who reject Judaism as their day-to-day guidance and value system, the notion of martyrdom is hard to fathom. These are people who don't care that it's Yom Kippur. They didn't fast on Yom Kippur. They just didn't even know it was Yom Kippur. And yet, if someone says, are you Jewish? Or they're going to make fun of Jewish people, they're going to right away get all offended. And that's not what the Tanya is really referring to. It's when they're given an ultimatum. If you're Jewish, we're going to kill you. And if you're not Jewish, like I think I shared before the story of defecate on the Torah scroll, they would never do it. They would choose death and torture, even though they didn't care about Yom Kippur. It's unfathomable. How does that come? So here comes the punchline. The Tanya offers this as evidence for the presence of dormant love and faith in the hearts and souls of all Jews, regardless of their level of piety and religious education. A faith that will tend to surface when faced with a very great challenge. So this faith is dormant. It's a love for God that is sleeping. It's unconscious. When triggered and faced with a challenge, it will come awake. It will come alive. Many irreverent Jews will sacrifice their lives for God, even if they are morally uncultivated, uneducated in Judaism, and ignorant of God's greatness. And even to the little knowledge that they do possess, they give little thought. So they are not choosing to give up their lives as a result of any mental appreciation or careful thinking about God, right? The reason why they're going to give up their life is not because it's logical to them, because It's not logical. They don't know anything of Judaism. They're not cultivated and educated. They don't possess the knowledge. Rather, they give up their lives without any mental appreciation or careful thinking, as if it was simply impossible to denounce the one God, without any reasoning or rational argument whatsoever. It's an amazing thing, and for some it comes, I shared by Kol Nidre of Ruth Bader Ginsburg of blessed memory, which is amazing that she passed on Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Judgment, when her whole, I think, 6 decades of her life were dedicated to judgment and justice. But she wasn't a religious Jew, but she had a very big mezuzah, a proud mezuzah on her office door. And she was the Sandy Koufax of politics, where Yom Kippur 2003, when Chief Justice Rehnquist, they would open, I think for over a century, they would open, the Supreme Court would open after their break, the second Monday in October. Say again? Was it the first Monday? Oh, I'm sorry. The second Monday in October, they would open the session, and she says, you can't do that, because what if there's a young lawyer who's Jewish and he's rising up and now he has to choose between his big day of presiding over a case in front of the Supreme Court or his religion? It's not fair to him. So they actually changed it over. They opened the second Monday, but they don't have any hearings on Yom Kippur, no matter what. So that's really a smaller example. I'm saying when there's life on the line of your being Jewish, and they won't deny it, and it's not coming from any mental or cultivated expression, it's something that's beyond it. It's something that's coming from faith, from this level of chachma. And this is, as we have explained, because all of the soul is illuminated and energized by the one God, through God's infinite light being present in the soul's component of chachma, which transcends fathomable knowledge and cognitive intellect. Okay, I think we're getting close to the end. Final paragraph. In the majority of cases, when faced with a huge test of faith, dormant love will automatically awaken. But how do we access dormant love in the normal everyday settings? The Tanya will answer this question in the following chapters. So this is really, really awesome. Just to conclude on this, let me just read the little practical lessons to summarize some key points. And then we'll just summarize this last idea, which is very powerful, and take questions. If you're not cut off from meditation, you can still unveil the dormant love in your heart using the method outlined in chapters 18 through 25. Even the most irreverent and sinful Jews have dormant love in their souls, something that was inherited from their patriarchs, and all the components of your soul are profoundly interconnected. So it's not hard to tap into your faith. Let's just summarize this, I think, beautiful idea. We each have an incredibly powerful soul. Never underestimate the power and the holiness of your soul, because ultimately your soul is connected to the highest of possible realms. It's connected to God's infinity. It's connected to this level of chachma, which is the highest possible. It's the bridge between God's infinity and God's finite light. Chachma. Chachma means the power of what is it. It's the level that we're not grasping God with our rational mental capacity, cognitive ability. We're grasping God with the power of faith. That's what Chachma is about. It's the power of opening ourselves up, of humility. And when we're in that humble, open, inquisitive state, we have the power to receive from God's infinite. That's Chachma. It's the power of what is it. You're inquiring, you're thinking with that seed, that initial flash, like that igniter of the lighter, and like the seed that is later going to be developed. So of course we have to use our mind and develop it, but the fact is that there's so many people that don't have the education and yet are proud to be Jewish. And even if they're not proud to be Jewish, when it will come a test of their faith, by and large, in almost all cases, they will be ready to give up their life to be Jewish. And that shows you that their relationship to God is beyond what's rational. They can't explain why they would be ready to do that. Sorry. So it must be that there's a level in their soul that is above rational. That's a level of this dormant love that we inherit from God. I have it and you have it. The problem we're left with in chapter 18 is that it comes out to the surface during grave danger, during a pogrom, during an inquisition. We need to try to awaken that now, so that when we're faced with a moral challenge, when we're faced with a distraction, when we're faced with a dilemma and a spiritual crisis, we will be able to push the right buttons because our love is going to wake up. How do we get it to wake up? Not in the time of crisis. Just when our Yetzer Hara, when our animal soul is telling us do this, and we're trying to control ourselves, we practice impulse control. We're working on the meditation and it's not working. So now the Alter Rebbe says, just press the right button and you have a love that's already in you. You just need to waken up. How do you awaken it up? We're still going to have to, how do you awaken it? We're still going to have to look in chapter 19. But what we know is it's there. We proved it's there from the fact that even the most irreverent and uneducated and sinful and lowly of Jews and ignorant of Jews is able to bring it up in the time of crisis. How do we bring it up now so that when we're faced with our dilemma later today, we have the right tools to act on it, and we have that adrenaline rush to keep us strong? We'll have to find out. So cognition is finite. We said yeah, we said that exactly. Sure, thank you. And just one private question: and those that gave up their lives for Hashem, seen as greater than those who underwent forced conversion, like the conversos in Spain. Is it not better to stay alive because Torah values life versus death? It's actually interesting, Shir. As we were reading that thing, it says the greatest. What was the expression? The greatest. I forgot the expression we said. But the Rebbe said many times, we need to live for Judaism, not be ready to die for Judaism. And you're right. So that is greater. So yeah, a lot to talk about there, Shira. For sure. The Rebbe, you know, when the Rebbe in the 60s and the 50s, he was trying to send Chabad shluchim. Like Adina and I are here in Novato. Nowadays, it's very popular. There's shluchim going all over the world. And it's like it's like trendy. It's a good thing to do. But in the olden days, it was very unpopular because the Rebbe was in New York. No one wanted to leave the environment and the warmth and the embrace of the Rebbe's teachings and Torah weekly. No one wanted to go far. And going far those days was really far. There was no FaceTime. There was no Zoom. There was no flights that would take you right back. And there was like going on boat. And the Rebbe, they said, Rebbe will do anything for you. So the Rebbe says, I want you to go to Milan, Italy. I want you to go to the Far East. And they said, no, we'll do anything for you here. And the Rebbe says, I'm looking for people not that are ready to die for me. I'm looking for people that are ready to live for me. I'm looking for people that are ready to imbue the needs of the world. This is a great story. I brought a menorah to someone in the hospital on Hanukkah. A Russian nurse I'm just reading over here a comment with an accent, and she told us her story how she got to the U.S. Came in as they were lit. So this nurse came in. She said, with a shining face, "Is that a menorah? I've never seen one before." That's amazing, amazing. What a story is about. Wow. You have to tell me how you were able to sneak in a menorah to hospital. I've always had problems lighting a menorah in hospital, but Isabel, you'll give me your advice on that. But that is a great story. But it really speaks to the power of the Jew, and amazing. Wow. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great week. Remember that dormant love